Any Suzanne? Right, well, your skill set. So I'm going to go with this guy. Get over there. Question.
Hi, I'm Junior. I'm actually here with my friends studying my BA, GD.
Right.
So we're in our last year of digital media design, and the question's really towards Nicholas and Amanda.
Okay.
In terms of the future, I agree that the books are very one-dimensional, so we would need something for it to bring books alive again, especially the passion of someone that's reading. So do you think maybe augmented reality and that slight technology will move into how books are actually delivered and read by the consumer?
Nicholas.
I have different views. I think augmented reality is often an overhyped thing. I think that a lot of the experiences which you see in augmented reality are more exciting for marketers than for consumers. And more often than not, there's a limited number of people who get very excited for something which they try to make a mass market product. To make that simple in another way, if any of you played any of the Phaidon games, the Ziervogel games, you see that their great success is to take the social out of social. There's very little that's social about things called social games. They made it so it didn't matter if your friends weren't there, it didn't matter if your friends weren't playing, you were still somehow interacting with their avatar. So I think, for example, in location-based gaming, I think, which is one form of augmentation, I think it become much more important. It doesn't matter whether you're actually at that place, you just use the spirit of the place to somehow influence it. For example, you play a game where there might be something set in Station Hall, you don't ever have to have been here. If you have ever been here, you get an advantage, you know, that sort of thing. But the true augmented reality, kind of holding this up and looking around the room and seeing something behind it and stuff, I think would be more exciting for marketing departments than for a revenue generation business.
Yes, I mean, in my previous life, I was in predominantly narrative publishing and clearly digital division of my trade, and now I'm in illustrated publishing. At the moment, I think there's a gap actually, and I think there's a design gap, a digital design gap, about how to present very, very extraordinary, high quality physical celebrations of art and photography and design, which is what we do, in an equivalent, really exciting, creative digital dimension. I think there's, as we all know in publishing, there's a lot of active development going on, massive, and the one issue that we've all found with apps, or we didn't kind of pay attention at the outset, was that people mostly expect apps to be 99 cents or free, so that's not a great model to base anything on. There is now, the tablet is upon us, and obviously has been for some time, but now with Kindle Fire and everything else is going to be serious. And all of us illustrated publishers, to be honest, is saying, what is our content going to look like in a digital space? What should it look like? And I think we've got, at the moment, we've got an option of an app, which is huge amounts of development and no revenue, not great. And we've got what we're calling, what everyone calls a fixed format, which is basically, as you know, a complete sort of representation of what the page is, and no one knows really how to price it, and it's not an exciting experience. So I'm not sure about augmented reality, and maybe that's the answer. All I'm sure it is that if someone comes up in a digital design world with what an extraordinary creative physical book could look like, or somehow could be translated into digital format and would be valuable enough and extraordinary enough that people would pay money for it, then the world is your oyster and you will become a millionaire very soon.
I could just say I could just sell you, Amanda, a dissertation just written by Kingston students.
Going, gone. Okay, penultimate question.
You've spoken a lot about how obviously entering publishing is going to be an entry-level role. Could you talk a bit about the career progression and the speed of that, and the opportunities for perhaps moving between departments, or whether it's best to go straight into the department you think you're always going to want to work in?
Okay, so at the entry level, career development, moving between departments, what opportunities there are?
I've got a few stories for you. People I've seen go through the MA, and this is now my 6th class of students. So there have been people who you'll want to know
know about the pragmatism at the moment, I'm sure, of taking the first job that comes your way. And I really, really sympathise with that. Last year, the advice was do exactly that. Just, if it's a job and they offer to you, take it. Unfortunately, not that long down the road, I've already got people leaving some of those jobs because they just aren't right for them. Going further back, I've had people go into marketing jobs in illustrated publishing, move into marketing and children's publishing, and then move into being a junior commissioning editor in children's publishing. Yay! Because that's really hard to get into children's publishing. I've seen people start off in sales roles and not yet move into anything other than a sales role. Similarly, production. The word is that it's easier to move between, in children's publishing, for example, between PR and sales, because you get to know the authors so well, than it might be between marketing and editorial. I listen out for these clues all the time. My sense is that people who can manage to get into a digital role, however boring, are doing themselves a huge favour, because you will just then have the confidence and the contacts and the skills to be able to apply those different areas.
Yes, just briefly, I think it's very hard to generalise because progression depends on the individual. I do think if you're working within one firm and you can spot other opportunities that you're in a good position, but ultimately I think it's attitude, not aptitude. And if you show yourself as willing and keen to learn and able to reflect on what you've learned and apply it somewhere else, you can always adapt your experience to make it yourself sound like you'd be a good fit and then prove that they've made a good choice.
Okay, Amanda.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. What we're looking for is employees who, care and passion and can adapt their skills and really, and if they're clear they want to come somewhere else, my door is always open. I have people saying, I can't go any further here, I'm really interested in this. Fantastic, be proactive. I think it's very interesting. I think there are now many publishers who do graduate trainee courses, and in fact we do one. It's evolving slightly, so it's slightly in a kind of static phase. And I think the advantage of that is if you can get on that, and maybe as well as an MA instead of, you then genuinely go around the company. And if you can do that, you genuinely should go with an open mind and not say, I want to be an editor, but I'll put up with production and sales because I have to. No. What you need to do is go with an open mind for your own, not for the company, but for your own benefit, and genuinely experience, and then make your decision about where it makes sense. But I think that I'm surprised that people aren't push themselves forward once they're in a company. If you know you're good in a company and people have identified you, you really are hugely valued, and you should be very clear about what you might want next, even if it's in a different role.
Okay, we're going to move to the last question. Who's going to give us the last question? Make it a good one. Over there.
At the back or at the front?
At the back. Take the mic.
I'm Fran Carson, I'm on the UCL.
Sorry?
Fran Carson, I'm on the UCL
Right.
course. I was wondering if, in actual fact, publishers are the consumers of most of the content.
Right. Are publishers consumers of most of... Do you read your own books? Amanda?
Well, I don't really understand what the question is. Does it mean... I tell you, actually, I think I do understand the question. And I'm very, very proud. This is... currently, obviously, I adore my books, and of course, and I'm not... I just would say that, but clearly they are extraordinary to look at. In my old world, I was in charge of many things, and for a long, long time, I was in charge of commercial fiction. And I could safely say that I was probably one of the very, very few managing directors or senior people in the commercial fiction world who actually loved commercial fiction. And I think it was really, really interesting when commercial fiction has had its ups and downs. It's now going through quite a challenging time. But when it was in its heyday, between my 90s to mid-noughties phase, most of the heads of houses would not be seen dead reading commercial fiction, and commercial fiction made all their money. And it was a really, really interesting thing. And I felt passionate about it, actually. I still do. And I think it changes many more lives, frankly, than literary fiction, although we all love literary fiction, we're all consumers of it. It genuinely reaches an enormous audience. And I could really clearly see, and I think I hope I would like to say that that was one of the reasons why I was reasonably successful at it, but I think it's a very, very good point.
Okay, Meike.
Yes, of course, I read my own books. In fact, I don't publish, I mean, if anybody of you knows, a lot of publishers who publish books in translation rely, because they don't speak the language, they rely on reader reports of 2 pages before they commission a sample translation and then commission the entire book. I never ever commission a translation unless I have read the book either in its original or in German and French or translation before I make up my mind. And then also on the editorial side, we take huge care on the editorial side. So by the time these books get published, I have read and worked on them about 50 times over, so I know them pretty much by heart. But generally, can I just say, publishers generally are, all my colleagues I think, are fantastic in wanting
More widely. You know, there's going to be nobody left to buy. One of the real difficulties, I so agree, is that publishers don't buy enough books themselves. They don't see how the consuming experience feels. Whether you hand over your 10 quid or your credit card, does this feel like value for money? Would you rather spend the money on something else? Because we've always got them cheap or for nothing by trading with other publishing houses, we lose track of the consumer experience of buying books. And ultimately, it's really important that we're not just publishing for ourselves.
Okay, first.
So in the world of games, I tend to say don't make games just for you, but do make games you would enjoy. There's many different structures of game types, 4 different ones. One of them is called killers. They like beating other people. Nearly everybody who makes games is a killer. And that's why there are so many first-person shooters in existence and why the entire industry does not understand why The Sims sells, despite the fact it's the most successful PC game ever. What that is a whole industry structured around making games, originally for early 20s blokes and now for 13-something balding blokes. It's basically what the industry does. If you don't adapt, both by making sure you don't just make games just for you, make it for multiple player types, but also be aware there are other people in the industry. It turns out there are women and they play games, and this is genuinely news for the games industry. If you don't get that right, you do ghettoise yourself. And I think that's a really big problem. So I think back to your point about the publishers here, people who consume their books. I mean, I think definitely not in terms of numbers, but there are a whole bunch of breakout things which really surprise the publishing industry because they're not the kind of books that they would read. I think there's a whole section about, you can make a living as a writer when somebody says they write science fiction, because a whole bunch of people in the literary world don't realise that people buy books.
Yeah, we have to be quick. Marianne.
A tiny endnote to that. That's to ignore a huge amount of publishing called academic and educational publishing, journals publishing. And just to say, editors in my world, as a publishing editor at Routledge, I defy you to have read all your books. But you did, yes, Suzanne nods. But you did have to knit your textbooks, so it's a different. It depends on the amount of work, and then you really feel great satisfaction to have made a difference.
I think that's a good end to this event because we have 2 trade publishers here. We must never forget academic publishers' journals. I can't name any of them, but we can't forget them. We're going to close it here. Please give a big round of applause to Amanda Ridout, Alison, Baverstock, Lovell, Meike Ziervogel, and Kernan. No free books in there. We've got a bit of time, so please grab a drink and have a bit more food and do ask further questions to the speakers. Thank you very much.